Bonsoir, and thank you for coming, everyone. We're really excited to discuss this topic with you because we've really been having a lot of fun doing this virtual immersion task with our students. And we're excited to share those with you and hear your ideas. We're going to structure this more like a workshop and have you participate in a discussion and then actually break out into breakout rooms to think of some ideas. So the hope is that you'll be able to apply some of these ideas to design really fun and effective tasks in your own programs. If you wish not to join a breakout room, then please ignore the prompt to join your breakout room and remain in the main room during the breakout sessions. You'll still be able to participate in the reporting session.
All right. So there have been a lot of talk this past year about the differences between teaching in person and teaching online. But we rarely talk about the advantages that the online format has over the in-person format. So we want to think about the advantages and also think about the disadvantages, but in a more practical way that specifically affects the design of interactive tasks rather than going through the general complaints that we all know and we've heard 100 times. So here are some of the chief advantages we've found that we can capitalize on in designing virtual interactive tasks. So the first is that in terms of providing time and access to resources and independent study for our students, the online format is actually much easier to post resources and allow students to look through them on their own time and to choose which they would like to access. Much easier than providing those multimedia resources in an in-person format, which is hard. And that's the second point, which is that we can use more multimedia and also more authentic resources in the online format than we were able to do when everything was pen and paper and we were writing on whiteboards. We were really restricted in our formats and also in the kind of real-time authentic resources from the target language community that we were able to provide. So we have more freedom with that in the online setting. And of course, it's quite easy to record like we're doing right now. And that recording for some students is really helpful. A lot of students use the recording instead of doing homework. They like to go back and listen to the course again or go back to a certain section and hear it again, or record themselves and provide that as what they turn in or what they present to their peers. So that's so much easier to do when they're already sitting in front of a Zoom room. And that opens up some new possibilities for interaction. We all know that there's also challenges. And so some specific ones that we ran into trying to do interactive tasks were with peer discussions. It's harder for the teacher to step away and let the participants talk amongst themselves. It's harder to get a natural discussion going, and it's certainly harder to have multiple discussions going at the same time as you can have in a physical space. And so we found that we needed to provide more structure for the discussions to make sure that the participants jumped in and spoke. And that if we didn't provide enough structure, sometimes they would just sit quietly in the Zoom room for a long time. Of course, we usually design the tasks to really take advantage of space. We usually hide things behind doors or have things be outside or be in a certain room or be hanging from the ceiling. And we're not able to do that in the online format. So we had to think of other ways to have learners move between tasks and deal with materials in the right order. And finally, the intelligibility of instructions. Because we work in total immersion, we have fewer tools available to us in terms of communicating to them what we want them to do online. So we needed to plan more and scaffold more to make sure that they understood what is expected of them. And we use those multimedia and those asynchronous resources to help with that. Whereas in person is a lot easier to just act out what we wanted or to be there to follow up in the middle of the task. But here we need to put more thought into how are they going to understand what we want them to do next, especially if it's a long series of actions that we want them to take. So we altered our tasks thinking about those challenges.
Okay, and so in stepping back and taking an overall view of what makes tasks like really effective in engaging students and in driving their learning, we identified this characteristic that we think pedagogically sound tasks need to have. So first, great interactive task should require language that is useful in their target language experiences. So language that they may come across in their missions. Two, begin with the end explicitly in mind. So the backward design. So design the task and then look for what they need to execute it. Then three, they cannot be completed alone. So completing the task requires teamwork and collaboration. And then they should activate prior knowledge plus new content information. So when students crack a new problem and learn something new, this new information is to be applied on their former knowledge. And so the new information will become a part of the student's knowledge. Then they can be done at a variety of language levels. So if students from different classes are to collaborate, it really helps if they work on the same task, of course. And those tasks also should require learners to lead their own learning. So that's why there is both individual and group preparations. And then after the task, they can also research the topic a little further. And then six, those tasks should allow learners to teach and help each other. And they can do this during preparation, but they also can do this during the small and large group debriefing sessions, where they get an opportunity to actually give suggestions to each other during the debriefing.
All right, now this is the participation part of the webinar, the first part that we're going to ask you to participate. And we have a small group, so I hope at least a few of you will chime in. So we're going to do some critical thinking here, just like we do with our students. We're going to take these criteria that we've laid out for what makes a great task, and we're going to compare those criteria to some tasks that we have seen people use, we have seen tried in language classrooms. And we're going to ask ourselves, is this a really good idea for an interactive task? Or is this not a good idea because it really does not meet the criteria? Or is this an okay idea? It meets some of the criteria, but it needs some work. So let's do this together. Let's take the first example and compare it to the criteria. The first example is fill in the blank songs and choral singing. This means you have a song from the target culture or a few of them. The teacher goes through and removes like every fifth word, let's say. The students have to listen and fill in the blank, and then they learn the songs and they sing the songs together. How do you compare this idea to our criteria? Does it meet all of our criteria? Does it not meet some criteria?
Is a comment that's come through on the chat, which is that this teacher has students sing together in person. And then she mentions that advanced students can put more effort into understanding the lyrics and the cultural significance of the song. So maybe the singing together piece, but not the fill in the blank piece.
All right. So let's think about it. So it really depends on the song, but it should require language that's useful in their target language experience. So that really depends on the song you chose, but we were discussing, for example, the La Marseillaise, the national song of national anthem of France. It's very popular with French teachers, but it really does not use language that you use every day. It's very extreme and poetic, so it wouldn't be a great choice for that. Knowing that what the purpose is and building up to that purpose, to some extent, yes, but like you mentioned, the fill in the blank is really making it teacher-centered, and the students are not really constructing the goal that they want. It does definitely meet the criteria of cannot be completed alone. Prior knowledge and new content information definitely have new content information, but it would be a little bit challenging to make sure that you have songs that activate their prior knowledge, meaning that the students get to come in as partial experts. Really depends on the student, but that's pretty hard to meet that criterion. Definitely they can be done at a variety of language levels, but songs also can be really complicated. And so often teachers are choosing them according to the level of their learners, which is not really the kind of interaction that we're ideally hoping for. Definitely not about leading your own learning. That doesn't lead that, and it doesn't really have a lot of teaching that they're doing to each other, because again, it's a very teacher-centered activity. This is a totally okay activity to do as an activity, but it's not really an interactive task. You can use songs to make interactive tasks, but as presented, it's not really a very interactive task. Let's try another one. So building a snow, we call them quinze or quinzy, a snow shelter with your team. So this is a survival shelter out in the woods. The team is told you're going to have to survive in the forest. You have to build a shelter. Go. How does that compare to the criteria that we've set out? It definitely meets the cannot be completed alone because we make it pretty hard and it's cold out. So when we do this activity, we make it hard. You could definitely do it in the summer as well and just set up a little bit different challenges. For our students, definitely the language is very useful. Survival language is very useful in terms of military students or students who go on missions, even corporate missions where they have to go out into difficult terrain or new places and set up a shelter or set up an office even. So really meets those. Definitely they understand the goal. We show them some pictures and we tell them what the goal is so they get that. Definitely activates prior knowledge because the ones who've done this before will teach the other ones. So everybody likes to contribute what they already know. And they have to learn new things. We put them in a new environment, new tasks. They have to learn new information. And you can provide that information or you can have them Google as well. Definitely can be done at a variety of language levels. It can challenge people differently and everyone can participate to their level. And they lead their own learning in the way that we do it because they have to figure out what they need to know. So we give them a test, but they have to figure out how they're going to get to that goal. And that's really the crucial thing about task-based learning is that they understand the goal, but they have to put it together. And then they teach and help each other for sure. So, yeah, different kinds of shelters also can really activate different prior knowledge. Totally good. I'm going to skip over to this one. So let's talk about choose an article and translate it to the group. So the teacher provides maybe 5 or 6 articles and the students choose the article and then they translate it and they tell the group what the article says by translating it. How does this compare to our criteria? So the translation, yeah, it doesn't necessarily embrace the variety of language levels because it's really asking them to know those exact words or go look them up. So it's not really using the level of language that they naturally have. I like that. It seems like an alone activity. You don't really need your friends to help you with this. You might need your friend Google, but you don't really need your classmates for this. So it's not a really great interactive one. Yeah, not interactive enough. I agree. Also, there's no guarantee that the language in a given article is really useful to them, but they have to translate it, so they have to look up every word. So they're looking up words indiscriminately, whether that word is truly useful for them or not. So really not an ideal choice. Prior knowledge and new content information, they're not being asked to share their expertise. As we've laid this out, you can change it, of course. But as we've laid it out, they're not sharing their life experience or their expertise. They're just telling you what the article says. Not really ideal. And they're not really leading their own learning. The teacher has selected what they're going to do and told them how to do it, and they're just following directions. So this is not really a great interactive language learning path. All right, let's try this one. So discuss a new policy proposal with the Tunisian minister. So for us, Tunisia is a country where French is spoken. You can also do this with Arabic, but otherwise you would change the country. So it's a target language country. There's a problem going on, and they have to propose a policy. So they have to draw up their policy and know how to explain it. And they go and meet with someone who's playing the minister. They meet with a minister. And using the target language, they have to justify why this policy is a good idea and convince the minister. How do you compare that to our criteria here? So, all right, requiring language that's useful in the target language. So we've definitely picked something where they're going to use a lot of vocabulary about their target country. Hopefully we've chosen a topic for the policy that's a bit relevant to their work. So easy to make it really useful language. They know what the goal is and they build toward that goal. They understand that they're going to go to this meeting with the minister. They have to prepare. They cannot do it alone because we require that they work in a group. So people are saying in the chat, it's very interactive, it's very collaborative. They have to help each other. It's very likely that they're going to teach each other using their prior knowledge and whatever you've covered in the course that they've learned about Tunisia or whatever the country is. So they're definitely going to, each one is going to be contributing. It's good for a variety of language levels because the goal is not to write a policy document, meaning they don't have to use the fanciest legal language. The goal is to communicate, to discuss with the minister. And we've seen our learners do that with very sophisticated language and with very simple language that gets the idea across, and that they still reach the goal. And as we said, they help each other. It's very interactive. So lots of good comments in the chat. Thank you. Just for the sake of time, I'm going to move us ahead. So it's good to think critically about what makes a good interactive task. Not all of our favorite activities are really interactive tasks. But then we're going to talk about the design. We're being very meta right now. Very meta structure is what we're talking about. How do you structure this task? So we're going to play around with how we have structured some of our tasks, and we're going to have you come up with a structure for a task. We're using these shapes here as a shorthand, as an abbreviation for some ideas. So we broke the tasks that we've done successfully down into their components. And we basically realized that you can plan a huge diversity of tasks by just rearranging these components, putting them into different orders and using them in different ways, even though they're the same few types of activities. So one type of activity you can have them do is preparation for the task, either by themselves or as a small group. That's what you're going to do later. It could be 2 or 3 people, it could be one person, but they do some research, some thinking, and they get ready to talk about the issue. Then there's the task itself, the collaborative task, where they have to do something. So we just listed some examples, and they have to work together to get it done or compete with each other. We usually do ones where they collaborate, but they could compete also. And then another component that we like to include is a time where they do deeper research or preparation, meaning they understand the basics of an issue, but they choose what they want to learn more about. So this is really important because this is learner-driven investigation of a target language topic. So they go deep in preparing themselves on something that they are interested in. Of course, everyone knows about general studies, so talking about it in your class, but we like to vary that. So not always just giving a lecture or having them read an article or having them watch a video. We try to get away from that. So we try to have the students themselves teach each other or explore something interactive so that the general study that we all do together to understand the issue is a little bit more interactive also. And then reflection. Reflection can be self-reflection. So I think about what I did well, what I could improve, but it can also be with peers. So giving each other feedback, or the instructor can give feedback too. So we mix and match, we reorder these components to make a lot of really interesting, challenging.
Okay, so here are some examples of tasks that we have done and had really good results with. So what we want to do here is to look at how we structure these to get the most student engagement possible and the most language learning possible for each student at their own level. So Nora is going to introduce the first task on debate on immigration policy, and I will introduce the other two simulations.
So one example that we did that's gone really well, we've done it a few times, is looking at former French colonies and their relationship to France in terms of immigration. Are refugees accepted? Are immigrants accepted? Is it difficult to immigrate? Is it easy? And then we have a debate. So the final task that they know at the beginning is that they're going to debate about whether that's a good immigration policy or whether it should be changed. So the way we structured this most recently is that we did some general study. You see the symbols here. We did some general study together about a specific set of countries. In this case, we studied 2 islands that are former French colonies, Mayotte and the Comoros. And we learned about the situation generally together. Then each student did some preparation on their own. So they came back to the class ready to explain an article or explain a video or explain some research that they had done, and they taught each other. Based on what they learned there, each one chose a topic that they wanted to go into more deeply. So they chose a role that they were going to play in the debate, and then they prepared for that role. So they actually did their own, they structured their own research, they chose their personality, and they researched what that personality would say in a debate like this. Then we did the debate. They debated one another. It was very successful. Each time we've done this, we've had to ask them to stop debating because they have so much to say. And then at the end, there's some reflection. So in this case, we did peer feedback. They told each other what they did well and what they could improve. And that was a very successful project.
Okay, and for the medical translation simulation, so the setting is the interpreter serves as a cultural liaison between an American female physician and a Senegalese Muslim male patient. So first, the first symbol, the participant received like a disease fact sheets in French and in English from Institut Pasteur in Dakar, Senegal, to review, as well as a brief article in French about how to respect the cultural specificities of traditions of Muslim patients. Then the second symbol, it's the simulation itself. So they practice the skill in a simulated virtual visit due to COVID-19 restriction, of course, one at a time. Then the third symbol, we debrief the students one by one, and then as a group, and ask them about their overall impressions, any challenges they face, and the techniques that they used. Then 4, later, if a student wants to, they can research the topic more in depth and on their own terms. And 5, finally, they can also present on a similar topic for their final cultural presentation at the end of the session. And for the disaster simulation, so the first one, the participants are giving a news article about an earthquake in an island country. Then they are divided in 5 groups. So security management, medical care, food and water distribution, emergency shelters, and camp management. So they first work within their group and take a few minutes to discuss their topic and decide on the particular issues each person will work on. So it's like group work, individual work, then they come back as a group, and then they meet with the other groups involved in the operation to discuss a plan of action to ensure that they're successful in their mission as a unit. And then they report to their higher command in the region, a role played by all the instructors. And then 6, 7, and 8, so we debrief the students and ask them about the overall impression and any challenges they face. Later, if a student wants to, they can research the topic more in depth. And finally, they can also present on a similar topic for their final cultural presentation at the end of the session.
So you see that there's different ways that we've organized the tasks. so that they're really engaging for the students and they're really effective for language learning. So sometimes we give them a chance to prepare and then we throw them right into the task and we just make them try it out with just a little bit of preparation, and then we do reflection, and we may continue on into a big group discussion, learning about it together. I think it's ideal when we continue on. It feels a little bit cut off when we just do a task, give them feedback, and then that's it. It's better if we carry that forward into the classes and they get to learn more about that topic or a related topic, like with the medical situation, they learned about other diseases together in different settings. But sometimes we don't throw them right into the task. We teach about the topic first. We learn about it together. They do research and preparation, and then they do the task. It's also possible to have them research something, really get prepared, do a task, but then come together and teach each other. Sometimes part of the task is preparing a lesson and teaching the other people. And then from there, they can choose another topic that they want to go deeper into. So it's sort of a cyclical process where they research something, teach it to others, and then choose something that they learned about and then go research that. And we also sometimes combine multiple instances of reflection where we learn about something together, they prepare, they deeply research a topic, then they do a task. We give them some feedback, and then we ask them right away to do another task based on the feedback that they just got, and then give them some feedback on that. So this is how we deepen the learning. So it's not just a one-off thing that happens in the afternoon. So we're going to use these symbols as our shorthand and work with the design of tasks now.
Okay, so now we're going to ask you to apply this way of designing tasks to an example task that we're going to give you. So we know that you work well with your own language team, but we think it can be helpful to go through this exercise of planning with new people. So we're going to do a little experiment and put you into randomly assigned breakout rooms, and we will give you 10 minutes to discuss your task. So each group will work on one of these tasks. So look at the different components that a great task has and discuss with your teammates which components you want to use and in what order to make the task the most engaging and effective for language learning. Since you won't have access to this presentation in your breakout room, a link to the slide with the components of interactive language learning will be posted in the chat, because you will need it to, you will need to use it while designing your task and planning the process. So this way, we will be able to look at it during the reporting time period. Okay, and we will let you know when you have 5 minutes left and 2 minutes left. And if you are done also before the end of the assigned time, please return to the main Zoom room to debrief. So the first group is going to work on producing a comparative analysis of anti-piracy strategies. The second group is going to negotiate international intervention in an uprising. And the third one is going to create a narrated walking trip of their choice. So they have to click on the link and pick up country and then design a task.
Yeah, I think that we had a lot more people signed up for this for this workshop, but I think that because we actually have only a few people, we'll just do one group. Put you in the breakout room, and so we'll actually have you work on the pirate project.
Okay.
So you are the teachers and you're lesson planning for your students. So you have to make the lesson plan for your students using the slide that we gave you. And what your students are going to do is they're going to analyze different countries' strategy to stop pirates. So there's lots of pirates in different countries and they have to stop them. So they're going to be analyzing the strategies, and they're going to be producing a comparative analysis. That's what your students are going to do. So you're going to plan the task. How are you going to have them do this task? So I'm going to make a breakout room now and just create it. I think I can just do it like this. So if you're willing to engage in this discussion, please go ahead and accept to join the breakout room, and we will stay here. If someone doesn't want to join the breakout room, that's okay. But that way you'll have something to work on. So plan this lesson, plan this task for your students, how they will analyze the pirate strategy.
Martin, you'll have to help me and guide me if I forget something, okay? Again, toddler, distracted, brain scattered, brains a little scattered. I think we started with a strong desire to get students kind of prepared for this activity. There's a lot of information and a lot of interesting things you could do. And we wanted to do some brainstorming to kind of talk about students' experiences with the topic, and maybe talk about different directions. Then we wanted to go dive into more, do a general study. Was that right?
Yeah, all together learning about the topic.
Yeah, where we would provide them a set of curated resources, very focused resources, where they could learn a little bit more in depth together and actually have a chance to discuss it briefly. You know, we talked about small groups, we talked about the whole group. We haven't quite decided yet which way to go. But after that, you know, I think that's where they could go into the individual deep research. Was that the third step we talked about?
Okay, yeah, it looks like he's saying yes. Yeah.
Yay. Okay.
Yes,
And
yes. Maybe you can't see me now. I'm nodding.
Lovely. We wanted students to really understand that and kind of choose their own position, because for the final piece, for a collaborative task, we wanted them to have maybe a sort of a debate or presentations where they could actually kind of choose the policy of their liking and defend it, pros and cons, and maybe answer some questions. Yeah. For the final piece, we're thinking of a self-reflection. So students writing maybe a paragraph about what they thought about how everything was flowing together and how much they learned. Please, other people in the group, please add if I've forgotten something. Have I missed a step?
Got it.
I think you covered it quite well. I don't know if anybody else wants to chime in, but I think you did a great job, Diana.
It's an interesting topic. Thanks everyone in the group. Yay.
Yes, thank you everyone. Okay, so you really thought about how they can put these different types of work together on the same topic. And there's more than one way to do it, of course. Any combination could be great. But when I did this recently, it was really interesting because they ended up really debating between themselves. Although I did not ask them to debate, but they ended up debating informally between themselves about whether the policy against the pirates should be about stopping the pirates, you know, law enforcement, or whether it should be about solving the internal problems in the country that are causing people to go become pirates. And that was a really deep discussion. And I love that. I did not ask them to discuss that, but that's where they got to. So any topic can lead them there if you give them enough time, really, enough materials. So that's it for what we are explaining. We have time for Q&A, and we also have some resources that we will share with you at the end. So do we have any questions that we want to answer now?
Well, Anke, just to clarify, in your when you actually in real life use the anti-pirate policy activity,
yeah,
what was your end goal? Did you want students to be able to debate and defend their point of view, or did you want to really shift the focus from that individual student-driven learning to kind of a more of students having to discuss and provide feedback to each other, or both?
Yeah, I had just done the debate with the immigration policy, so I actually did not ask them to debate. Sorry, it's being a bit funny. But I did ask them to critique. So I was working on comparing and contrasting language. This one is better, this one is worse, those kinds of terminology. And also a lot of language about both security things like putting up a blockade, or I don't know how you say in English, interpellation, like when you go stop a boat and you arrest the people on the boat, whatever that's called. And you know, like those military terms, right? Because it has to do with their work. But also they talked about economy and they talked about social problems that are leading to piracy. And actually we got into the accidental discussion about intelligence gathering and how you can trust people because they did not believe some of the pirates about why they had become pirates. That was very interesting little segue we took. They talked about, can we believe these people who are telling us their reasons, their life story? So I asked them to compare and contrast the policies, talk about whether the policies were wise or not, and to talk about consequences. What will happen if we take this very militaristic, aggressive approach? What will happen if we take this social support approach? What will happen if we help the pirates start small businesses? So they were working on cause and effect and compare and contrast language.
Thank you for clarifying. We talked about backward design a little bit in our group, and it sounds like your approach, you have to have that, right?
I am an extreme proponent of backwards design. I not only do I do everything with complete backwards design, meaning that I only include the things that they need in order to complete the task. In my case, I did the task on Friday, so Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday are building up to the task. But also the students know what is the goal. So the students are also participating in a bit of backwards design because I give them the rubric that they will be evaluated on, and I give them the task on Monday. So they know that they are preparing to complete the task on Friday. I'm a big proponent.
Thank you. That sounds like a fun activity.
Yeah, and sometimes for our simulations, what we do is that the simulation is on a Friday and they actually have a class, a cultural exploration class, the entire week on the topic.
Yeah.
So preparing them to execute the task. So
yeah. I think for us, that's the defining characteristic of task-based learning. The key word in task-based learning is based, meaning there's a task, but everything you learn is based on the task. You're not just learning stuff because it's fun. We also do that. We have separate times of the day where we just do stuff that's fun. But in the task-based learning, everything is about how do I achieve that task? And some of it is kind of guided. You know, I'm telling them, you guys are going to need to do A, B, C, and D in order to complete this task. But more and more, the more that we know them, the more that their language increases, the more we just give them the task and we have them figure it out, and they have to use the target language to figure out what do we got to do. Even they plan their own research and everything amongst themselves. This is basically moving to a facilitator role for us. I think we used up our time. I'm happy to stay and answer any other questions, and I think Etienne has time too. But also we will share the PDF with you that has some clickable links, so you can see some of the things that we created to let the students prepare for the task, or sorry, I need to find it again. But you'll have a PDF where you can see some of the things that we prepared and how they evaluate themselves, and also how they access the material, the different things that they are working on. I will upload that, I think.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. A big round of applause to our presenters, Anke and Etienne. Appreciate the effort that went into this. And as in the past, we'll put the recording of this webinar on the website. We'll share it with those who attended, along with any other resources like Anke indicated. And then in the chat, I put the date and the topic for our next webinar coming up April 13th with a colleague of ours, Dr. Alexander Arguelles, who is a polyglot in many ways, and so has done a lot of self-study for language. So for those of you interested in or working on studying other languages, or looking for resources and ways to support your students in continuing their study, because many of our programs are short-term programs and they always ask and are interested in ways of continuing their work and study on their own, and methods and techniques and those kind of things. So we hope that Alexander will be able to share that with the audience that will join us on April 13th. So Shams, anything else we want to do before we wrap up? Otherwise, we thank you for joining us, and it's 8:01. And as they would say on Minnesota Public Radio, they would say the news is next. So,
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Noah.
Great
Thanks
evening, everyone. Yeah.
again.
Thank
You
you.
too. Thanks a lot.
Bye. Happy
Bye-bye.
spring.
Happy spring.